on behalf of my husband of 32 years, Marcus. 3 of our 5 biological children are here today, my brother and his wife, our 3 nieces and nephews. We thank you for the warm welcome that you've extended our way into our family. We feel like we are one of you today this morning on Saturday, so thank you. We've talked a lot already this morning about your great state motto, live free or die. And it causes me to think also about the motto of the state of Virginia, death to tyrants. You East Coast people, I'll tell you, you get this, these state mottos. We've always been pretty proud of Minnesota. We're known as the Gopher State. We're pretty proud of that. Actually, our state motto is the Star of the North, and we're proud of that, but there's nothing quite like live free or die, as long as there's no criminal intent. You know, it's a great motto. And another thing that I like about New Hampshire is just the quality of the people and the kind of people. You're considered stoic, independent, blunt-speaking people. I fancy myself one of you, and so I hope we can get along together because I feel the same way about that. Last Sunday morning, I was on a show called Meet the Press. Maybe some of you have seen that show. And on Meet the Press last week, I said that Obamacare, now again, this is the legislation that is already impacting our health insurance policies. You remember President Barack Obama famously said if we would get Obamacare, our premiums would lower by about $2,500 per household. You remember that? How do you like say hello to 20% increases in premiums, 40% increases in premiums? So what a deal. Pay more, get less. That's kind of what we're looking at with Obamacare. And how do you like those over 1,000 waivers that we've seen given out from the federal government to favored friends, including your neighbor to the east, the state of Maine? 1,000 waivers to unions, to special. Oh, we got a Mainite here. Thank you, Maine. You got a waiver. All I want to say is, I want a waiver too. How about you? Do you want a waiver? I think I want a waiver from the last 2 years of the Obama administration. It is not polite to call something for what it is in that town. And I said that we have a gangster government running the show down in Washington, D.C., and I don't step back from that statement. Because this is an administration that is intent on taking from its opponents and giving to its friends. There's a lot in common with a lot of Chicago's history in this administration. And just like Jimmy Carter's administration, remember the Malaise administration, just like we saw that end after one term. It is my firm belief and conviction that Barack Obama needs to be a one-term a Republican from New Hampshire to serve in the United States Senate. I think we can do a little bit better in our Senate with Harry Reid, where he is hell-bent on preserving federal subsidies for cowboy poetry festivals. It's essential government services, you know, in the United States Senate. That's what you consider responsible government. And just important, I think it is wonderful that all of you here in New Hampshire did your duty. You helped us take that immense gavel out of Nancy Pelosi's hand. You've given us that gavel. We thank you that you gave us that ability to be able to take back the gavel. America thanks you, New Hampshire, for what you have done. Give yourselves a hand. It's astounding. So now I am here in New Hampshire today for the purpose of asking you one more time, New Hampshire, we need your help because you have set the course for the rest of the nation. You have set the standard for the rest of the nation. This wasn't an easy state, but you did it. You cracked the nut, and you were able to send liberty, freedom-loving people to serve, to represent you. And now we need to replicate exactly as Jack Kimball said, what New Hampshire has done. We have to replicate that in all 50 states, because this is our brief window of opportunity in 2012 to win the Triple Crown of the United States Senate, running that up to 60 seats of liberty-loving conservatives. In fact, I wouldn't mind seeing, I don't know if I have one right, maybe senators that have something in common. Tea, anyone? Anyone? I'd like to see some tea served in the United States Senate. 60 seats of tea served in the United States Senate in 2012. An overwhelming majority of conservatives, tea-loving supporters. And how about a United States president that gets what the American people want?
We got the kettle on for you.
And this shall Bachman exist. And this and this is what we call civility. This is what we call civility. So as soon as our political figure is over, shall Bachman exist. And this is the way from Madison, Wisconsin. Don't worry anything about it. We're going to go back and enjoy the rest of our time together. Thank you so much. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your love. And thank you for your welcome. Get ready. We're seeing this kind of a response because the left knows we're coming and we're serious about you. As you know, the left has targeted New Hampshire as one of their first 4 states that they plan to flip back into the progressive column. Are you going to let it happen?
No way!
Absolutely not. Because we are going to take our country back in 2012. Yes. Your next Senate seat here in New Hampshire. And we're going to do that by getting the party off on the right foot in this first state in the nation for primaries, the all-important caucus state. And I love it. This is something Minnesota does have in common with New Hampshire. When we are trying to get elected in our state, we also go living room to living room, person to person, to shake hands and get to know each other. Isn't this a great way of electing the people's representative so we can listen to what the people say? What a novel concept. We listen to you. That's the Tea Party. We listen. And please, my New Hampshire friends, fully appreciate just how important you are in this process. And we heard from Jeff this morning the importance of your earliest freedom lovers who literally were willing to spill their blood on this soil and on the soil of Massachusetts in order to secure our liberty. They did this for us. And they successfully handed that torch of liberty from generation to generation. And once again, it will be up to New Hampshire to stand up and deliver for us in this first in the nation primary. It is that important and that much is at stake. When you go to choose the quality and the kind of candidate that we want to lead our nation in 2012, and you will decide whether we will live free and prosperously. You will decide. You will make that decision. Or whether we will be that first nation in the first generation in the history of the country did not successfully transfer that torch. And if I'm a betting woman, I'm putting my money on New Hampshire. I think you're out to I'm a former federal tax litigation attorney. That's what I did for a living. I practiced exclusively in the United States Federal Tax Court. That's where I learned firsthand, up close and personal, how damaging the United States tax code is to individuals and farmers and businesses and families. I saw that devastation, and I wanted to do something about it. Let me share with you the first figure, 75%. If you can put that up on the screen. Think about this number, 75%, and what that means to you. That is the amount that our national debt has increased under Speaker Pelosi's 4 years as Speaker of the House. It took us 231 years to accumulate debt, about $8 trillion. It took her 4 years to accumulate 75% of that amount, or an additional $6 trillion. Let me give you another figure. $1.213 trillion. That's $1.2 trillion. That reflects the amount of the United States treasuries that are now held by the Federal Reserve. That is as a result of its controversial policy known as quantitative easing Part 2. I sit on Financial Services Committee. I'm a business person. Marcus and I started our business from scratch. We're pretty proud. We're now up to 50 employees in our business. We're pretty proud of that. We're on both sides of the paycheck. And what we've seen from this is a debasing of our currency. Part of what the Federal Reserve was charged to do was to see our currency, our dollar, hold its value. Has our dollar held its value under the watch of the Federal Reserve? Hardly. Ron Paul will tell you. The currency has lost approximately 96% of its value. I think it's time for a job evaluation of the Federal Reserve. Yes. In fact, the Federal Reserve is now the largest holder of U.S. treasuries. And consider, China owns almost $1 trillion worth of U.S. treasuries. And the president of China, as you know, is named President Hu. President Hu. And so it could rightly be said, who's your daddy? But now I think you could say Ben Bernanke is our dad as the head of the Federal Reserve. Now let me give you another figure. $107 trillion. That's the estimate of the unfunded federal net liabilities for Social Security and Medicare. Now let me repeat this in case anyone missed this or you can't see the screen. Look at all those zeros. This is reality. This is why we have to take on 65% of the federal budget. Remember, our current budget this year, we're no lean, mean machine in Washington. We are $3.8 trillion in a budget. 65% of that is our entitlement program, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. 107, I think that's written up there wrong. It should be $107 trillion. So that number is wrong. It's $107 trillion. That is the estimated unfunded liability of Social Security. And remember, this year is the second year in a row that Social Security has been sending more money out in checks than what it's taking in. That's 6 years ahead of time of what the projections were. By 2017, Medicare is scheduled to be flat growth. Where do they go? The programs will have to go to the Treasury. I'm just here to tell you, when you go to the Treasury, you open up that door, moths and feathers fly out. There is nothing behind that Treasury. Yes, we have revenues coming in, but as you know, this year alone, the deficit will be $1.65 trillion. This is remarkable. Under the big spending George Bush, and he was a big spender. I respect our president, but he was a big spender. Just consider that in 2007, The deficit was something less than $175 billion for the year. Last month under Barack Obama, the deficit was $223 billion. We are going off the cliff with out-of-control spending. New Hampshire, if you don't remember anything else I said today, remember this. Stop the spending now. Stop it. Stop the spending. Stop the debt accumulation. Stop it now. And the reason for that is every individual in this room and across the country that's under 35 years of age. You are the debt-paying generation. And you could quite simply be looking at a reduced standard of living unlike anything the United States has seen before. And we'll get into that a little bit more as we go on. 35%, let's look at that. That's the job-killing corporate income tax rate here in the United States. This is an incredible statement. The United States of America this year will be the top nation in the world with the highest corporate tax rate of any nation. Do you want to know why jobs are getting outsourced from America? Look no further than this figure, 35%. 3.8 million, that's our next number. That's the IRS's estimate of the number of words in the tax code. How many of you are busy filling out your tax forms right now? This is something I know something about. When we called the IRS, they couldn't even give us an actual number of words in the tax code. And you're liable under penalty of perjury and under jail time to get this right. 3.8 trillion. Happy reading. I hope you're enjoying it. April 15th is coming. Let's look at another number. $1.2 trillion. That's the estimate that we spend in this country for compliance with regulations. I consider the regulatory burden in this country one more tax on the job creators of this nation. Now another figure, the number 1. This administration has issued exactly 1 permit to drill in this country for energy since Barack Obama came into office. As soon as he came in office, he instructed his Interior Secretary, Ken Salazar, to cancel 77 permits that had already been issued. Let's look at the next number, $1.83. That's the price that gasoline was in our country the day before Barack Obama took office as President of the United States. My, how times have changed. We can do a little bit better, don't you think? Yeah. I think so too. 19 of 20. Take a look at this. That's the number of metropolitan markets across the United States, Boston, for example, where housing prices have fallen last quarter. So that's for 19 of 20 metropolitan markets. The price of housing has fallen. Name one city in the United States, there is only one where housing prices haven't fallen. Washington, D.C., the boomlet where money never goes down, that big bubble. You're right. That's they think that Hollywood is La La Land. I'm just here to tell you, that's a different place. 8.9%. What's that? That is the lowest unemployment has been in the last 20 months. And that doesn't include the count of underemployment as well. These are not good figures. 6,000. What does that represent? That represents the number of pages of rules and regulations that the Obama administration has already written to implement the highly controversial transformational piece of legislation known as Obamacare. 6,000 pages. And you thought that the health care bill was bad. It was nearly 3,000 pages long in the Senate. And that bill will never finish being written because the bureaucrats behind the scene and the executive have already written an additional 6,000 pages of bureaucracy to bind us. 159. That's the number of new boards and commissions that Obamacare will create. So now you have to deal with your doctor and yourself, and you've got your insurance company in between. Now you have to fight 159 boards between you and your doctor, and you also have to fight the 6,000 pages of regulations and growing. Now our final number, $105 billion. Has anyone in the last week heard me talk about $105 billion, $464 million trap that we saw the Democrats, Speaker Pelosi, Harry Reid, and Barack Obama drop into the Obamacare legislation. This is money that was hidden in plain sight. As you know, in the United States Senate, the final version of the Obamacare legislation didn't even get to the senators until just a couple of hours before they were going to vote. The way it works in Washington, we're given a bill. It's called an authorization. It creates something. It creates a program. It creates a funding stream. But it's not money. It creates something. That's called an authorization. That's what Obamacare was. Then what we do to fund that program, we pass a second bill called an appropriation. That has the money in it. So, for instance, we could authorize that we will buy a ticket to Disneyland for every American. That's called an authorization. Then we pass an appropriation to give the money to buy those tickets so you can go to Disneyland. If we pass the first bill, we can brag about how we passed a bill to send you to Disneyland, but you're not going unless we put the money in the second bill to pay for the ticket. Understand?
Yeah.
Well, what happened with Obamacare, again, this wasn't an insignificant piece of legislation. I think the American people are paying attention. On this legislation, if you recall, you look up any newspaper search, you look up any radio archive, Jeff's radio show, for instance, or any television show. How many times did you see debated nationally $105,464 million in money to implement Obamacare? Do you remember that debate?
No.
I was paying attention. I was on the front lines. Did you come down to Washington, D.C. maybe and get on a bus and help us and go to, yeah, right, there you go, the state of Maine, always remember Maine. This is amazing. Think of what's happened in the most controversial piece of legislation, recognized in the Rasmussen polling for over 49 weeks straight. Not just conservatives, not just Republicans, but if you poll all Americans, a majority of Americans for over 49 weeks have said, repeal Obamacare. No other issue in modern times or in polling's history has garnered so much universal support. Think of that. Probably going back to the Kansas-Nebraska Act in the 1850s. No other piece of legislation has so garnered the public's attention. They so thoroughly dislike this bill. And our Democrat leadership just happened to drop in $105 billion in funding. Did it just escape Harry Reid's mind to tell the senators about this funding? Did it just escape Nancy Pelosi's mind? I think Barack Obama gave something like, 53 speeches or 153 speeches on Obamacare? Did he just forget to mention that, oh, by the way, we've got $105 billion in this bill that we're going to implement socialized medicine? No, this was intentional. They knew this was going to be an unpopular bill. They knew they could lose the gavel over this bill. They knew in order for this bill to survive, it needed money and it needed to be implemented, and it needed to be implemented immediately to get its tentacles all through your lives and our government and our institutions so that no matter who is elected in the future, your franchise, your vote would be neutralized because they would get their way. Well, I don't know about you. And I don't exactly know why our Republican leadership has not taken this up in Washington, D.C., but I am insulted. As a member of the House of Representatives, I'm insulted that I was not given this information before the vote. And you should be too, as the American people, because that's not the way we do business in this country. That's not what the brave men and women who have served our country. My father served in the Air Force. My stepfather served in the Army. My brother retired out of serving in the United States Navy. That is not the kind of nation that they went to war and that they put their lives on the line for, because we are a representative, a constitutional republic. That is our government. This is a crime against democracy, not to reveal a material term of this legislation to the American people. spending. It means this is unsustainable debt. It means it's undermined currency. It means unfunded liabilities, unfathomable levels of taxation for our children and grandchildren, unrestrained regulation, underwater homes, unleashed energy inflation, unsettled families, unending and unemployment and underemployment, unknown, unwarranted, unstoppable self-spending. And it has to stop now because it could mean the end of the American dream as we know it. And it could come sooner than any of us would care to admit. Now, in the live free or die state, all of you remarkable common sense people, if you were in a situation where you held that position of power in government, I think it's safe to say you would take action if you saw these numbers. That's why I'm there. I didn't go there to be a backbencher and sit there and try and figure out how long I could stay in Congress. I went there because I believed in this country. And I love this country. And I will not allow them to take away this country from freedom-loving people. I won't allow it. In D.C. who think they get how to run your lives far better than you are. See, you can't be trusted to run your lives. They have to run your life for you. See, they have a better plan for your health care. They have a better plan for your income, your W-2. They know how the environment should work. They want to fuel the command and control of our economy and the climate change fantasies that they live in. They think they can do that. Their ultimate example of arrogance is Obamacare. Let me tell you about a bill that I just recently introduced. It's in response to the fact that government even thinks they should tell you how much water you should have in your toilet, what kind of light bulb you should be able to buy. And I just decided I'm going to introduce the Light Bulb Freedom of Choice Act. Thing for this country by inventing the light bulb, and I think darn well you New Hampshireites, if you want to buy Thomas Edison's wonderful invention, you should be able to. That's my legislation. That's my which brings me back to the results of where we're going from here. In Capitol plazas, you've seen it just this last week in Wisconsin, in Indiana, and Ohio. And just a little phrase that went through here earlier today. We've seen bitter, hateful demonstrations against the essential reforms that we have to take. And isn't it interesting? The demonstrations in Greece, the demonstrations that we've seen in Spain, in the United Kingdom, in Madison, Wisconsin, and in Ohio, what are the people demonstrating for? More government, more spending. What about the Tea Parties? What have the Tea Party said? We just want to be responsible with our own money. We want less government. We want less spending. We want greater liberty. Yeah. I don't know about you. I like these radicals. Yeah. These are my people. Democrat senators flee Wisconsin when the going got tough. You know, remember Vince Lombardi, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and now the new phrase is, when the going gets tough, the Democrats, they're out of there. That's what they do. But I do give the president kudos for one thing, because at least when the president was a state senator, he did vote present 136 times. He at least did that. But I don't want you to lose hope, because we still are government of the people, by the people, and for the people. They may want to take that away from us, but we're not about to let it happen, because the real solution is not the arrogant elites that are on the banks of the Potomac in Washington, D.C. The real solution is you, because you get it. You know how to run your life. You know how to buy health care. You know how to start a business. You know which toilet you want to buy or which light bulb you want to buy. You don't need to tell them to tell you that. You can do it. I trust you. You've done it here in New Hampshire. You hold town hall meetings. In your churches, in your communities, you gather. You know how to make it happen. You are the solution. And I'm excited about having that be a part of what our government is for. We know what it's not for. Government's not about bailing out Wall Street. That's why I voted against it. Government is not about running banks. Government's not about running car companies. It's not about a command and control society or wasting trillions of dollars. But I do know what government is for. It's putting you back in charge and allowing you to make all of those fundamental, basic decisions like reforming the tax code, which is as a tax lawyer, one of my favorite things that I want to see happen. Whether it's a fair tax, whether it's a flat tax, the one thing I do know, we cannot have 53% of the people paying the federal tax burden in the United States. We need to spread that tax burden. And I believe that we have in the American people today the courage, the conviction to win, inch by inch, foot by foot, yard by yard, vote by vote, election by election, as you have showed here in New Hampshire in 2010, the election in 2012. You began it here nearly 2.5 centuries before. You will be the keepers of the flame, I agree, this time. Which brings me to another turning point in our nation. Going back to the time of the Civil War. This was our first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln. He was leaving Illinois for his inauguration. The nation, as you know, was roiled in turmoil. And this was the union that New Hampshire helped to hold together, and it was disintegrating. And as he left the train from Springfield, Illinois, he stopped at various locations along the way to Washington, D.C. It was a tension-filled trip. He had marshals with him. His life was under death threats. And he stopped in the city of Indianapolis. And while he was there with the nation on the precipice of war, his own life, his presidency on the line, President Lincoln poured out his heart to the gathered crowd. And I quote from his words, "I appeal to you to constantly bear in mind that it is not with politicians, and it's not with the presidents, and it's not with the office seekers, but it's with you. And the question is, shall the Union and shall the liberties of this country be preserved to the latest generation?" So if you are looking at me, or if you are looking at anyone else that comes into New Hampshire as being your salvation for the country, you are looking at the wrong venue. Because you need to look in the mirror. The answer lies with you to keep and preserve the liberty, just as you did initially in the immortal words of live free or die. It is with you to keep the liberty, not with a politician. And it's still true. Because I believe in you, and I believe in the ideals that are America, and I believe that this nation began as a miracle. We lost more battles than we won at the beginning. We never knew if we were going to make it or not. We're in a battle of our life right now, I guarantee you. Right. But I believe that we are ripe for a miracle again. And so I say, I believe in America, and I'm up for it. I believe in the future. I think we can do it. I know we can do it. And so I ask you, are you in for 2012? I'm in. Are you in?
Yeah.